choose this life I'm gonna lead it. I must give my hand to make it in the morning, in the rise of the spring, from all that's been done. Welcome to the Biocharisma Podcast. Here's your host, Christopher Gardner.
All right, we're back with Mike Williams, the sage of Quay himself. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, Christopher. Thank you for having me back.
Tell me how it's going in North Carolina. Did you survive the terrible Matthew hurricane cone of destruction?
We survived. It came in essentially as a tropical storm. There was a lot of rain, I will say that. We had a lot of local flooding, but the way it was being hyped was Category 4, 5 that was going to slam into the coast. And of course, that didn't happen. And I wasn't trying to downplay the fact that the storm could cause damage. The point I was trying to make, I'm saying this because I put some Facebook updates on Facebook because I was on the North Carolina coast when it was about to roll in. There were a lot of disconnects. So if you were watching the media, if you were watching the Weather Channel and the mass media about what was going on with that hurricane, they were talking about death, destruction, storm that we haven't seen in decades and so on. And it was all done to make people extremely fearful. When people are fearful, as you know, Christopher, they don't critically think. Fear instills paralysis, and people go into flight or fight mode. Of course, it was all intentionally done, and it was a very good video by Weather War 101 on YouTube, where he laid it all out, where Hurricane Matthew was geoengineered. It was a created storm. It's man-made. It wasn't an organic hurricane, and that's the other point I wanted to make to folks when I was doing these Facebook updates. But that doesn't seem to click with people. You know, people don't. You try to tell them that these storms are man-made and they're created out of thin air through the technologies of HAARP and geoengineering, and people it blows right past them. For some reason they just can't get themselves to focus on it.
I find that most people that aren't aware of that, it's too big for them. They're caught in the cognitive dissonance of things like sayings like, oh, it's God's will, or, Mother Nature, she's, tempestuous. People have these very old notions of what humans are actually capable of. But all you have to do is follow the money. There's Stanford Research Institute, MIT, Cal Poly Institute. They all have graduate programs in what is known as, they don't call it weather engineering, they call it geoengineering. And so if you can get a graduate level type of education in it, you know that there's money in it. And so none of this stuff is new, and all this kind of stems from the old military technology of cloud seeding. And I don't really want to go that route with this particular interview. I've done interviews with Sophia, and so have you, Sophia Small Storm. If anybody wants to get into the whole weather engineering side of it, right, is into recognizing just how much we can engineer our environment through the weather, it's actually quite laughable. Just as an aside note, I think it was 2004 when Katrina happened, if anybody has any doubt about weather engineering, just go online and look at the flight pattern of Katrina. It started in the Caribbean, goes up, hangs out over Guatemala and Honduras, kills a bunch of people there, then goes due east or northeast towards Cuba, then Florida, goes through Florida once, goes out to the Bermuda Triangle, then loops back, goes through Miami into the Gulf of Mexico, and then takes a 90-degree turn and heads due north at something like 14 knots. Like, it was booking towards New Orleans. When you look at the jet stream and when you look how air moves, air does not move that way, so it's just one of those things. It's most people don't want to believe that the cell towers and the microwave technologies and the aerosol spraying and the chemtrails and all this stuff actually has as much of an effect on our environment as it does, because it's quite depressing to think about. I can understand most people are just trying to like get along with their day, let alone like think of like, oh my God, there's some overarching plan to run the hydrological cycle.
The other thing with Matthew, Christopher, when I was at the North Carolina coast near Wilmington before the storm, they were spraying like you would not believe.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember pointing up to the sky, and I was with Rebecca, and I said, take a look. I said, see this? It was unbelievable the amount of spraying they were doing on the coast. So clearly what they were doing was geoengineering and steering of the storm. And I mean, it's just plain and simple. For those of us like yourself and myself and others that know about this, it's very, very clear, and we could see it. We know what it is that they're doing, but the rest of the public has to catch up.
Right. So let's get into psychological engineering, because we're talking about the sky right now. And there's this notion that basically all of our minds are connected in the sky. This is an old alchemical way of looking at things, that our mind isn't actually in our brain. Our mind is up in the air, up in the actual air. And in New Age, people have different terms for it. Scientists like to call it the Noosphere. I really enjoy listening to Rupert Sheldrake, and even though a bunch of his science has been proven to be incorrect, he still has some really cool far out there things when it comes to the morphic fields. But this is a very old concept that, we all have a collective mind or an overmind that is in the ethers, let's say. And I just like to call it the Noosphere. That makes sense to me. And when you do things like pollute the sky, not only with actual physical, particulates like aerosols, but you pollute it with all these airwaves. Microwaves and radio waves, this actually has an effect, like a physiological effect on us. Like it creates a difference in what we can perceive. Where are you at with this?
No, I think it's absolutely right. With the work that I do, Christopher, and you're familiar with my spiritual regression work, one of the things that has become very clear to me through doing the work that I do is that, like past life memories, as an example, do not reside in your brain. They reside outside of you. They reside in what I refer to, when I explain it to my clients, because it's easy for them to grasp, is in the expanded consciousness. And that could be the morphic field, that could be the ether. You refer to it any way you like, but it's not residing in your skull. So I absolutely am a firm believer that those types of memories, that type of information resides outside of us. And of course, that just, leads to the whole discussion that it's all interconnected. And I also agree with you 100% that the contamination of the air, of the atmosphere, of the ether is intentional. And I believe that it's very possible that by doing what they're doing with all these contaminants and these pollutants, is to be able to further suppress our ability to do the things that we should naturally be able to do. And one of those things is to be able to reach out into expanded consciousness.
It's amazing. I'm a massage therapist for my main breadwinning. And right now in Costa Rica, it is rainy season. So we don't get to see the sky at all. And you would be amazed that everybody's solar plexus is locked up. Like everybody's complaining about the same thing. They have different ways of presenting it, like their body will present it. But almost everybody, I'm having to do all this solar plexus work and work through the mid-thoracic region of the back just to get people to feel right. So what that shows me is on a very mechanical level, when you don't see the sky, it has an effect on your physiology and your mentality, right?
Right.
So and I know, like, I'm an ultra bitch about this because I absolutely love blue sky. And when I was a kid, I remember I was a daydreamer. I would love to lay outside in the grass and look up at the beautiful blue sky in Florida. And I became ultra distraught when that blue sky went away, because it did. It went away like 1998, 1999. I was being convinced that it was pollution. Like I was being convinced that, oh, this is because there's too many people on the planet, yada, yada, yada. I traded my, Christian original sin guilt for being a carbon breather, guilt, that type of thing. Oh no, I use petrochemicals. I'm a bad person.
Yep.
I should go to Gaia's hell, right? And it's all bullshit.
Right.
This is an engineered thing from the get-go. So where I want to get into this is, have you ever looked at Lieutenant Colonel Bearden's work, Tom Bearden?
A little bit. I can't say I'm an expert on it.
When I moved down here to Costa Rica, I got into like the whole free energy movement, or at least over unity, like where you could, amplify your energy production, because most of the properties down here don't have electricity. And it's very expensive to bring electricity to these remote locations. So I got into his work when it came to his collaborations with this inventor, John Bedini. And they were blowing my mind because they essentially were talking about how Einstein's work was bullshit. General relativity, special relativity, quantum mechanics, that's all just noise that's put out there. The real stuff is this physics called scalar physics, or scalar interferometry. And what turned me on so much to his work was the very first thing I watched on him was he was talking about how our brains are scalar transmitters, and how our brains access everything. You have to look at the neurons and the synapses in your mind as a big antenna array. And that antenna array, with the way it's actually wired, just like any other like antenna array that's outside of your body, the shape of it will determine what type of information it can actually interface with. And so he showed how people that have very little gray matter in their heads can still access information. They call it water on the brain. Like I forget what the technical name is, but there's a lot of people out there that are born with almost no gray matter. So they should be technically retarded. Excuse me for my inappropriateness when I say the word retarded. But he said these people should have no capacity to think, but they can. And now how is that? Well, it's because the brain isn't what we are told it is. It is this scalar transducer. And he showed how the hemispheres actually will take in the signals and read interference patterns. And so this plays into exactly what you and I are speaking of when it comes to the Noosphere. All this information is around us. Like we are constantly interfacing with this thing that's above us. And when you look at a lot of the indigenous lore and all around the world, they talk about the sky. They talk about the big blue sky, even in Christian mythology. And when you look at what the alchemists were talking about, they were always talking about the sky as being where information is. And even to the point in Christian mythology, they said the devil rules the sky, in the sense that, like, if you're too much in your mind, you're going to be misled. You're going to be deceived. So this all, you see, I know I'm being kind of, ambiguous and all over the place, but this whole thing with what's actually happening with our sky kind of being, filled with all this extra noise, I think it really has an effect on our psychology.
I think it's undoubtedly that way, Christopher. And what folks have to understand is that there's nothing that they do that doesn't have a purpose. If you've looked into alternative research long enough, you will start to very quickly and very clearly see that the agenda is anti-humanity. So, when they start spraying the skies and doing the things that they're doing all over the place, I mean, we could talk about our water supply, everything. It's about keeping humanity down. That's what it's all about. It's about keeping us in a box, and so that we don't really understand and realize who we are and what we're capable of. So this thread here that we're on, I agree with it 100%.
So there's what I want to get into with you specifically is there is a massive agenda with promoting drugs right now. all types of drugs. So, if you're a savvy chess player, or if you're strategic whatsoever, the best way to get somebody to do something is like in the movie Wag the Dog. First deny it. Show like you're trying to defend against something that's not there, and then people's attention will be drawn there, right? So
Right.
what do you do as a controller? You make something illegal. And then people are like, oh, well, if they didn't want drugs out there, why would it be illegal? Well, we know now that one of the biggest industries in the United States is incarceration. So you're going to make a ton of money when you have laws out there. Plus, whatever you confiscate that's illegal, it's off the books. Like, think about how many trillions of dollars are confiscated by the CIA through all this illegal activity, right?
Right.
None of that makes it into accounting. So you have the drug agenda is promoted just by saying, no, it's illegal. And that's something that a lot of people really can't see. So I see that. And then I also see the entertainment industry is corrupting the Noosphere. All these ideas, like, people don't recognize the power of an idea. If you watch a movie and you are not aware that you're dropping into theta state, you are so hyper suggestible. These things get planted at such a deep level, like you'll start to think that you're having original ideas when it's actually been given to you.
Right. That's artificial intelligence in my book. That's AI.
Ooh, do tell. Like, can you elaborate on that?
Okay. I've talked about this before. When they refer to AI, when I talk about I'm talking about the controllers. They always portray it as some robot is going to show up, some humanoid. It's going to mow our lawn for us, going to wash the dishes. It's going to do all the mundane tasks so that we can be freed up to do whatever, right? And what I tell folks is that that is not what's going to happen, and that's not what is happening. The AI is already in place and has been for a very long time. The artificial intelligence is the massive mind control program that they have had out there for at least 100 years. And it has been in full swing with the advent of the television and mass media, Christopher. So what you have happening, all the things you just talked about, where people are being programmed, there's predictive programming when you go to movies, and what they do is they just beat it into the ground. They play it over and over and over again, whether it be on the news, whether it be in the movie theaters, whether it be in reality TV shows. The same thing keeps being played over and over again, where they're shaping your values, they're shaping your culture, they're shaping your belief system. They just keep going at it. What's happening is now that's an artificial intelligence. You're no longer thinking freely. You're not a critical thinker. Your thoughts are not your own. You think they are, but they're not. So now you're starting to think in terms of how the AI wants you to think. You're believing in ways that the AI wants you to believe.
That's brilliant. Like, I know, I remember hearing you say that, but that, like, this is giving me a completely, this is wonderful. I'm sorry, I just had to interrupt you there. That's a really wonderful way of looking at it, because we are, if you're under that influence, you are the automaton. There is no need for like some, digital mechanical robot out there. You're the robot.
You are the robot. And the thing is, it's gotten to the point, Christopher, where people are so AI'd that they actually defend the AI. So when you and I go out there and we talk about, just pick a topic, well, we can just talk about what we were just talking about. Let's geoengineering as an example, right? You and I would go out there and say, hey, do you know that this is going on? And if we try to take somebody down a very logical path to explain with facts and evidence that this is going on, they shut down and they defend the AI's position. The AI's position is, that's not happening. You guys are crazy. Nothing to see here. Let's move on, right? So,
nothing to see here. Just move on. Nothing to see.
And that's what people do. You and I see it all the time, right? Because you and I speak to people all over the place. And whether we're on the radio or we have friends and family, we're speaking to them and they are AI'd. And the thing is, they don't even know it. And that is the beauty of this very, very evil system, is you don't know that you're being controlled.
It is the beauty. It's the genius of it, because it's the same thing that a psychopath knows. A psychopath uses a good person's goodness against them.
Right.
They know a good person will always default towards projecting goodness. And this is what I try and tell my good friends. I'm like, you're too good. You don't understand. The people out there that want your shit, that want your spiritual energy, they're not good like you.
Right.
And this is where the whole new age corruption comes in, where like, oh, if I just think it or will it, it's going to be there. No, that's not the truth. It's just not. There are very definitive sides. There are things out there that are willing to sacrifice you for their benefit without any consciousness about it at all, or conscientiousness. Like you do not have any, like, you're nothing. So in that, right?
Well, let me just to add to that, because you're on a very good point. I had said to somebody several years back, and it just kind of stuck in my head over the years. They had asked me, what's going on in the world? And I said, look, the reason why good has difficulty defeating evil is because evil knows no boundaries.
Right?
Right. Good people do. You have boundaries. You're like, well, I'm not going to go there. No, I'm not going to do that. Evil does not think that way. Evil does not have the word I can't, do not in its vocabulary or in its mindset. It pursues whatever it needs to pursue, regardless of what's in the way.
That's why I love the Upanishads and the Puranas of the Hindu faith, because it gets into, it says that when you go from the golden age to the silver age to the bronze age to the iron age, everything accelerates because of what you just said. Evil does not have rules. Right? Good does. Like,
right.
If there's morality, things will, if everybody is on a moral plane, then things will last a very long time in that regard. But the second you have a couple people that start to lie and start to deceive, then the whole fucking thing slides down very, very, very fast. And so the way the Upanishads state it, they actually go in and they say the other three ages, the silver, the bronze, and the iron age, those three ages together are equal in length to what's known as the golden age, the Satya Yuga.
Yes.
So to me, I'm so happy that I was exposed to that, because they say if we were to assume that today's age, we're in the Iron Age, in the Kali Yuga, it would make sense that, everything is corrupt and backwards and everything like that. They say that the only reason why souls incarnate during the Iron Age, and this gave me so much. This enlivened me when I read this, because I was sort of in a downward spiral back in the day when I came across this, was it says you only incarnate now for one reason: to learn courage. Like, the soul comes into existence at this time so it can learn courage, so it can stand in the face of evil. It can say no. It has to learn no, because when everything's puppy dogs and ice cream, it's easy sailing. Like, whoa, where are you going to have a backbone, right?
Right.
But it's when you're in the face of corruption and evil and all this stuff where you have to take a stand. Like, if you love and care about people, you have to take a stand. You have to. Right? Or at least that's what a good person would say.
Well, I agree with you. You have to understand evil. You have to understand what evil's all about in order for you to be able to really understand what good is about. Otherwise, you have no baseline. You have no reference.
So this is so great, because this, my girlfriend and I were talking about it last night, and it was really, I kind of fall back on sort of the biblical messaging. I'm not saying that the Bible is 100% correct, but there are certain things when it comes to the description of the archetype of evil, which would be Satan or Lucifer, however you want to call it, as this being that is, let my will be done, not thy will. There are no rules. Like, when you live by my will, there are no rules, right?
Right.
So that's just saying that there's no morality. You don't have to take anything as a consequence. Your conscientiousness, your your empathy for others goes away. And it just seems like at least the figureheads that are, rolled out in front of us, it's very obvious that they're using those people as I guess you would call them like morality buoys. Like, really, how can anybody look at Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? And I know they're just figureheads. I don't even think they're
They're veneers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But just like if you were one to say watching how people react to them, you can really tell a person's morality from that.
Right.
Or you could tell how much information a person actually wants to take in. So this gets into your AI theory. I have people that are very close to me because of our pasts. Like, we shared a lot of time together, but we're not so close because we don't share the same views of things. And they have essentially sold out for money. Two people in particular that I have in my mind, we were ultra close. We did so many things together. We looked at things the same way. And when I started to go my path, I would point out things. And one of my friends actually said to me, I cannot look at this right now. I cannot. And I have empathy for that person, because in his life, if he was to actually acknowledge that one little thing, the crack in his AI would have been too monumental. It would have been like the Titanic. Everything would have started to sink for him. And because he is so determined to make it in the path that he's in, his AI kicked in and said, nope, I cannot, no matter, even if it is true, my devotion isn't to the truth. My devotion is to what I want is what I want, and that's all I want.
Right. Well, that's a control point or a code that's in the AI, right? That's the other thing. The AI is incredibly advanced. So in that example, which is a great example, Christopher, I can't go there. I can't look at this right now. Think of that as programming or a code within the AI that's in that person's mind that says, if you get presented with these types of questions or these types of scenarios, you will divert, you will shut down, you will go elsewhere. And that's exactly what he did.
It's exactly. I watched it, Mike. Like, it's almost like he went schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Like, it was like in his, like, I've seen schizophrenics, and this person is not a schizophrenic, but it was like literally the program went, like, his face twisted. Mm-hmm. He got that super serious crease in his ajna. Like, it was like, whoa, like his head was about to explode. He tilted his head and literally said, I cannot give attention to this right now. And his shoulders turned and everything. It was like, you talk about from a body language perspective, he just completely shut that out. Yeah. To the point where when I've brought that point up since then, he doesn't even remember that point even occurring.
Well, I had a conversation with some folks just the other day, and they were asking me about the election. And I had offered my insights as to what I believe was actually going on. And so the conversation was going okay. And then it reached a certain point where one of the people at the table had said, well, let's talk about something else now. Let's just move on to whatever. And
nothing to see here, folks.
And it was very interesting. And I love this person dearly, but, I kind of laughed to myself. I didn't laugh out loud, but I thought to myself, there you go. There's the AI. That's the point in which the AI code kicks in and says, do not listen to this man anymore. And
it's amazing.
Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about, making cupcakes and or what's on, TV tonight or whatever it may be. So it goes on all the time, and I'm not picking on this person because I love them dearly, but it's there. And if you pay attention, you will see it. You will see where the programming kicks in, and boom, there they go.
Well, this is so insidious. So there's so many different things that are overlapping here. Okay. So I want to get into how artificial intelligence, so in meditation, thoughts are things, right?
Right.
If thoughts are actually things, and there's all these people thinking these things will have zones where they overlap each other. Well, if you could take a more macrocosmic picture of that and watching all these thoughts, all these ideas overlapping, that would look like a circuit board, which would totally fuel your notion of more of like an etheric artificial intelligence.
Yep.
So now you're getting into the alchemical realm of what the devil is. The alchemist came out and said, flat out, the deceiver, to them, the devil was a deceiver. That's it. The deceit that comes out through all these interference patterns of lies, this has an actual physiological and biological effect on the planet. Like, it actually changes things. It's remarkable because I've never had it be so lucid in my mind how this is actually working.
Yep.
Let me tell you something that's very important, because this, on a spiritual level, because when I was in the ashram, we learned a lot about the subtleties of mind and thought. And what was really neat about it was we could all, there was like a few of us within the ashram that became ultra sensitive to interruptions from the environment. And this is what I'm thinking is this is like, from your model, this would be the AI. This would be like the Matrix, with a glitch in the Matrix saying, no, you're not to go there. But all of us were, little bastards, and we like to go where we're told not to go to. So I look at us as like receivers and transmitters. So when you get an array of people together, like if you have a group of people that are meditating and their sole intention is to know the truth, I can to this day, these people are my friends, and all of us have the same intent. It's truth. I want to know the truth. That's all I care. Well, it's not all I care about, but it's core. Like, it's not money. It's not anything else like that. It's what gets me going is I want to know what is real. And I believe what's real is definitive. I think what's the AI is trying to teach us is that, no, the truth is subjective, blah, 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 blah. I think that's all bullshit. Because when I get down to physical, immutable laws, they are observable consistently by everyone. It's not subjective, it's objective. I do believe that there's an objective universe, right? And so the AI is trying to teach us, no, it's all subjective. Like, this is why the Mandela effect. Last night, we were looking at this video of the Mandela effect, and between the two of us, this guy only showed probably like 20 or 30 examples. But my girl and I, half of them, we were like, yeah, I remember it being this other way. So there's somehow, some way, if our brains are these scalar interferometers, these base emitters that are sending signals out there, and then you have a mass consciousness out there where you take the conglomeration of everybody's minds together as the Noosphere, by interjecting deceit and lies and all this stuff, you would literally change the memory patterns of people. That's where memory is stored. It's not stored in our gray matter. It's stored in the Noosphere.
So what they're doing is they're jamming the frequencies is what they're doing.
That's such a great way of saying it.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, they're running interference. They're jamming the frequency. That's brilliant.
Right. And so we can outrun them anytime we want to.
Right.
So that's how I look at it. In other words, they can put anything they want out there, but people who are really dedicated to the truth and people who really, really stay focused and pure, they can bypass all that stuff. And they know that. And they know there are folks out there that can do that. But they're not so concerned about those people because they're a very small minority. So what they do is they continue to pollute the airwaves with all kinds of stuff so that you don't even try or attempt to try to understand the truth or to do some research or whatever it may be. I mean, to develop yourself metaphysically and spiritually. So what they do, Christopher, is they just throw a bunch of junk on the road, a lot of it. Right. And then they tell you, you've got to go from point A to point B, and you're looking at it, you're like, what are you talking about? Look at that road. I can't get through there. But those of us that know how to navigate that road realize that we don't have to climb over the junk to get there. What we need to do, right? What we need to do is not focus on their junk. And that's why I always tell folks, look, you start by turning off your television set. Turn that thing off and start going inward and start understanding who you are as a human being, who you are spiritually, who you are as a soul. And once you start moving in that direction, what happens is the passageways or the roadways, the direct connection back to source, back to the truth, will open up for you. But as long as you don't do those things, that communication, or that line of communication, does not open up. And that's where the vast majority of the people are sitting right now that are on Earth. They're sitting in a place where they don't realize who they are, and therefore that line of communication is either closed completely or it has a lot of interference in it.
To me, I think this is the original meaning of devotion. Like devotion to God is really devotion to the truth. People that are truly devoted will actually have a conduit, a pipeline of information that they will, whether or not Jesus is real or not, I'm not saying he was, but he says, like, you will be an outsider, you will be an outcast, like people will not like you, like as like if he's a myth, even as the myth would indicate if you are devoted to God, you will be crucified. That's the Jesus myth,
right?
Or part of it, at least. So let's just look at it mythologically. I don't know what the actual history is. So in a lot of ways, I used to feel like a victim just because I did want to know the truth. Now I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm more mature. I'm like, the truth in and of itself is the fuel for me. It's the beauty. It's in honesty. It's just being honest. It's just truly being honest. And it's something that I see as the world becomes more corrupt. It's like people I know actually use that as an excuse to be kind of corrupt themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they will sell things that they know aren't good for people. They will do things that they know they can justify. They'll buy things that they know. They'll use systems that they know. But because the whole system in and of itself is so disgusting, they can rationalize it away, right? And so this is that whole thing that we were talking about earlier with the Kali Yuga. It's just this like, cesspool of deceit. Like people are self-deceiving more than anything.
They are. And going back to what you said before about the truth, right? What I explain to my friends and my family is the truth is binary. It's either on or it's off. So when I have people tell me things like, my truth is this, or my truth is that, what they're really saying is, and I tell them this, they get a little ticked off, but too bad, because what we're trying to do here is we are trying to get people on a path that leads to truth. Is that when you say things like that, my truth is, what you're saying is, my perspective is, what I wish to believe is. Your perspectives or your perceptions or your belief system, in most cases, is not grounded in truth, because you haven't looked at anything to understand what is true and what is not true. And that is the box that most people are living in. They formulate truths based upon rationalizations. They rationalize things versus actually digging in. And what folks have to really understand is that pursuing truth is not easy. It's not easy. It takes a lot of hard work. And there's going to be times when you're going to go down a path and you're going to realize once you're down that path, and you might be on that path for months or maybe even years, that you were deceived. And the true truth warrior understands that and realizes that. And instead of continuing on that path, trying to rationalize why they got that far, and at some point they're going to be back on that path, the person who is really dedicated to truth turns around, does a U-turn, and says, okay, that's off the table. Right now I have to go look at something else. I'm going to investigate whatever, why that was a deception, whatever. But the thing is, that's the thing. We have to understand truth. you have to study it and you have to research it and you have to really take in all of this information and you have to decipher this information because there's so much garbage out there. There's like 2 tons of garbage out there to get to 1 ounce of truth. So the truth is hard. I was on one radio show and we were talking about the whole spiritual aspect and what we need to do to be on a spiritual path and to stay in truth and to serve creation. And the host of the show said to me, man, that just sounds really hard. I'm like, well, yeah, it is, but
yeah, it is.
What's your choice? What are your options?
Right.
To stay on a path of deception and lies and live your life that way? What you do when you do that is you sub-optimize your life. And I will even go further in saying that you're sub-optimizing the lessons of your soul.
We're getting into this shit. This is my favorite out of all the interviews I've ever done. Because check it out. What you're saying about the AI and what we're both coming to the thing is where people are in denial.
Yeah.
This is also something that's brought up in the Puranas about the Kali Yuga, is that people's addictions become primary in their life in the Kali Yuga. So an addiction, for definition, is when you continually will interact with a substance that you know is bad for you. So some, dipshit might say, oh, you're addicted to breathing or you're addicted to sleeping. No, those things you fucking need.
Right.
Addiction is when you're smoking cigarettes, okay? You know that is harming you. There
Right.
is no, you can't, if you're drinking whiskey every night, it is harming you. So in the addiction state, you say, you do the, it doesn't, I know it's doing that, but you'll rationalize your way out of it.
Or they say, Christopher, I don't have a problem. I can stop anytime I want. That's the other line that they give you.
Right. I'm a functional addict. Well, I
Right.
think people become functional addicts with lies.
Yeah.
I know politicians are full of shit, but I know this, but no. So this is what we can do to decipher how a person is actually willing to receive information. If a person is an addict, they will not be able to receive, like an addict, like I'm an addict of coffee. I'm not trying to be on Mount Pius right now. Like I am a caffeine addict. I know that. But about 2 or 3 times a year, I'll do a coffee fast. I'll do these things where I'm off of it and I go through the pain and the headaches and all that stuff just to kind of check my shit, right? But what I've noticed with addicts that cannot do that cannot actually take their foot off the gas, they have a very hard time with admitting that they've been duped. It's something in their there's something in their wiring that there's a correlation, and I'm just brainstorming right now, so I don't know if I'm being clear. But what I've seen is the person that's ultra addicted is the same person that's in ultra denial, that is the same person that cannot admit that they've been fooled. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah. I think that's a big part of human nature, is that not wanting to admit that you were duped or fooled or deceived. Nobody wants to believe that they were deceived because everybody wants to think that they're brilliant, that they can, that they can decipher and decode and that they're really smart and they understand right from wrong and they know when somebody's lying to them. I mean, this is the whole psyche of human behavior, right? That's how people think. And so I think it's just it's a reflexive type of response that they have when you say to them, you know what, you're wrong on this, right? I mean, they'll unravel many times and they'll start becoming very angry. They could become belligerent. They shut down. They walk away. I mean, those are all signs of somebody saying, don't tell me I'm wrong, right? Don't tell me I was deceived. That's the behavior that they portray.
So look at the deleterious effect that these two things have had on society. Would you rather be right or be happy? That was a huge thing in the New Age movement that I really remember when I was opting just to be happy, like I'm just going to be happy. I listened to like people that I really respect, like Tim Ferriss and Tony Robbins and stuff like that. I have this aching thing in the back of me as like, you guys are all talking about this, that, and the other, but You're fucking millionaires. You're in the know. When are you ever going to actually talk about something that's worthwhile? Instead of like, the way I'm going to make $1 million is to teach you how to make $1 million fucking dollars. Fuck off with all that.
Right.
Let's get into some stuff that's actually real. So you have that whole thing. Would you rather be right or happy? That whole mentality. And then you have the mentality that was given to us by Einstein, where in general and special relativity, oh, it's all relative. It's all relative. Nothing is, it's all perspective. We have we have this whole special and general relativity, and then we have this whole thing. Happiness is the point of life.
Right.
I see those two things as giving a get out of jail free card to the perpetrators.
Well, right. And they do that in a multitude of ways. And by the way, the New Age movement is a product of Tavistock. So
right.
People should know that. You could take a look at one of the networks of Tavistock called Esalen. I believe that's how you say it. It's ESALEN, the Esalen Institute. So I'll just leave it with that. Take a look at that and understand, what it is that they do. And what you're going to see is you're going to see an enormous New Age movement agenda that they are pushing. So just so folks know that. Yeah, I mean, and also the whole consumer aspect of life, Christopher, is be happy. Buy yourself stuff. Just keep buying stuff. Buy shit, and you'll be happy.
The mainline that drug of new consumption. I've seen it. I've had girlfriends in the past that I knew they had to go shopping to get right in the head.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like I've seen people do that where they're unhappy, they're depressed, life is not going the way it is. You know what I think I'm going to do? I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go buy a brand new car. That'll make me feel better. Right?
I have two. That's a male thing. I have two guy friends that are really that way. Like I could predict almost to the month. They have like a 2.5 year window, and it's like, I gotta get a new car.
Right.
I just need a new car.
I know it's a disease, folks. It's a disease.
Oh, but it's been implanted. And the thing is, these people are such awesome people and they have no idea. It's just like, there's a justification. If I am compromising myself this badly, I should be able to have what it is that I want.
Right.
And that's the justification. It's like, I grind, I beat the shit out of myself. I'm doing all this stuff. I should be able to have whatever it is I want. But little do they actually know that what they want is being programmed into them. They don't naturally want things. You tell them what they want. And I've noticed that over and over and over again. So I want to tell people, want the truth. The truth will set you free. Want the truth. The truth should be the primary thing. That is devotion.
Right. And going back to what you said just a little while ago, Christopher, we were talking about people basically being in a system of self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because the matrix creates the society and it creates the culture. So it's problem, reaction, solution. The matrix creates the problem. So let's use as an example the fact that people are working 60, 65 hours a week. Both parents are working. The kids are wards of the state. They have debt. They can't keep their nostrils above the waterline. That is the problem that's been created by the state. The reaction is that you become stressed out, you become depressed, you become very worrisome, fearful. And then the solution is, well, hey, you know what? You could feel better if you do the following things. You can go buy yourself more material stuff. You can engage in different types of material activities. All of this stuff is all created. People are living in a big cycle. I call it a big hamster wheel, and they don't see it. They don't understand that they are their own worst enemy because they're staying on that hamster wheel, and thus, because they're not connecting the dots, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It's the ego. I loved Osho for a lot of the work that he put out there because he redefined what ego was for me, because he put it in perspective. He said, we all have egos. Ego is just a sense of separation. A little ego is the one that's so fragile that it can never admit when it's wrong. But in popular parlance, people think that that's a big ego. It's actually a very small ego.
Yeah.
And what he would say is the large ego is the ripe ego. The ego, it's like the ripest fruit is the one that falls. Like the biggest of egos are the ones that like fall and they know that they have fallen, and then they could admit, oh my God, I was an idiot, right?
Yep.
But they are a whole being then. That's when you actually become an adult, is an adult recognizes, oh shit, the world isn't all puppy dogs and ice cream. And this goes all back into the whole psychological programming that was our wards of the state school system that you said. The whole Prussian school system was literally eliminate critical thinking. When we eliminate critical thinking, we make people wards of the state and we'll put them in perpetual childhood.
That's right.
So
it goes back to what George Carlin had said, right? They don't want critical thinkers. They want you just smart enough to run the machines. That's basically it.
But now you're the machine. So this gets back into your AI theory. So I want to break this down so that there's as clear of a model, because I can see the model very easily. And for you, those of you out there that don't know this physics yet, you have to look up scalar physics and sympathetic vibratory physics. For those of you that are out there that are into music or musical theory, look into it, because this is the study of vibration. Also look into cymatics, because these three sciences all study how subtle and not so subtle vibrations overlap and create things like actual physical things. So in this, we all, every human, every biological life emits electromagnetism. We know this. Your model is stating that this artificial intelligence that's put out there, and let me know if I get this correctly, is in the idea realm, in the form of you take whatever media is out there, whether it's, the news, whether it's, movies or books, whatever the bullshit is. This has each one of these generators, these base stations called humans, emitting electromagnetic frequencies that either believe or don't believe this media. All of this as a conglomeration is the Noosphere. So are we on the same page?
Yes. So okay. Basically what I'm saying is that they've commandeered our thoughts. So, and we know that thoughts create reality. So by commandeering our thoughts, this AI is now creating its reality because it's steering our thoughts toward its objectives.
So check this out. Now, this is where I've had immense, I'm so excited and so happy about this, is I've taken psychotropic substances, right? I've taken a bunch of ayahuasca, a bunch of peyote in my life. And when I was first doing it, I was still under more of the zealot way of looking at it, like this was an incorruptible space. But one time I was taking it and I was in the space and I became very aware that my enhanced cognition of my physical surroundings was being there were thoughts, there were ideas that were actually being interjected into my own personal, I guess you would say, absorption field.
Yeah.
So what I was saying is, in the ayahuasca space, I became very aware that there were artificial things that were being interjected, not from the actual people that were in the space. So this gets back to the whole thing that I was talking about earlier, where good people always project that there's nothing but good out there.
Yeah.
And what I became very aware of was like, oh no, when you're in a hyper-suggestible state, there is so much more that can be embedded in you at such a deep level, especially when you're in that sphere of trust, that it's even more important to have critical thinking skills when you're in those states.
That's right. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to discern the discernment piece of it, Christopher, especially like if you're in a state of expanded consciousness is very, very important.
It's so important. So I'm very happy because I have friends of mine that are they're very big in critical thinking, and they don't take anything for face value that partake with these substances a bunch. So, and I know that their intent is pure also. So that has given me a lot of solace in that regard. So what do you see as a solution to all of this, other than, learn some critical thinking skills? Like, where I still feel really upbeat about things. I don't know, just because I know where I'm at with things.
Yeah.
I can't really control where other people are at. But it's sort of like the whole notion is like, I feel like I want to become an activist in a way, because there's never going to be a time. Control freaks always want to control everything. And so if you have these psychopathic control freaks at the top of the food chain right now, there's no place that you can hide. There's no place that you can go and not be under their influence. So what are you seeing as some solutions to this? Because I want to find a solution. I want to get out of this mess.
Well, I believe that you and I and others have to continue to pursue the truth and to communicate the truth the best that we know it. So that process has to continue, because I look at that, Christopher, as really table setting for future generations. So you and I are going to pass the baton at a certain point, right? Because we're at an age where we can do only so much in the next, let's just say, God willing, next 20 or 30 years, and then others have got to pick the baton up and run with it. So I think that the work that we're doing, I'm not just talking about you and I, there's many people out there doing this type of work, is very, very important. And then I think that for me, I look at this first and foremost as a metaphysical lesson. It's a spiritual lesson that helps to further develop the soul, and it infuses the soul with wisdom. So you talked about the Kali Yuga age before and everything that goes along with it. We are here for a reason, and we're doing the work that we're doing for a reason. And so I understanding that, I finally came to grips with the fact, because I had to ask myself years ago, why am I interested in this? Why am I doing these things? It's a lot easier to do X, Y, and Z, is what we were talking about before. It's easier to be on the hamster wheel and just get lost in reality TV shows, because this stuff's not easy. And, the other aspect of this is there's really very little monetary rewards or material rewards for the work that we do. And that is really part and parcel of why it's so important, because I myself do not rely on or expect any kind of reward system that is the standard bearer of the matrix, which is money, right? And material life, and having a bigger house and a bigger car and belonging to a golf club and drinking wine and all that stuff, right? Not that drinking wine is, if you drink wine, I'm talking about wine club. But
what do you got against wine drinkers, Mike?
Somebody would type that in. They'll listen to the whole show and like all this good stuff's coming out and they'll go, you know what? I can't believe you don't like wine. It'll be the comment. But no, the thing is, I look at it as a metaphysical yeah, right? This is how people react. So I look at it as a metaphysical experience. I think if you view it from that perspective, and I honestly believe that is what it is, because I have a whole theory on how this works. And I don't know if we have time to get into it, but I believe to the extent that you take the red pill, if you take a big red pill, then your soul's development, it develops exponentially. If you take a little bit of the red pill, then you have a little bit more soul development. And what I believe happens, Christopher, is that we do not lose the wisdom, the knowledge, and the love when we pass from this incarnation and then we cross over and go into the next life. I believe what happens is, to the extent that you figure out that this is a matrix, that means that there are more opportunities available to you come the next time that you are going to incarnate or do something else from a spiritual soul self perspective.
I love that. That's awesome.
I honestly believe that this is how it works, because some people believe, you live, you die, and then you start all over again. You incarnate, your brain gets wiped, and so on, everything else. Your brain might get wiped in the next incarnation. We're talking about reincarnation, folks. But we talked about the ether. We talked about the expanded consciousness. We talked about all of that. That doesn't go away. So I believe what happens is we get more doors opened up for us, opportunities to experience different existences, different realities, different experiences versus the person that continues to take the blue pill here. If you continue to take the blue pill here and you got your head stuck in the sand, what's going to happen is you're going to keep coming back to blue pill land. And that's this reality right here. So that's part of...
I love that.
I don't want to think that I'm rationalizing it. I had to sit down and be philosophical one day. I had to sit down and say, what does this all mean? I mean, there's all this evil out there. I'm doing what I can. There are others out there doing what they can. We're making some difference. There are people who are waking up, but I'm thinking, well, current rate and pace, this is going to take like 1,000,000 years, you know? So, so I'm thinking, you know, what? There's more to this, and I had to go inward. I had to stop thinking at it from a physical, incarnate, human perspective and from a human experience, because this is temporary. This is 75, 80, 90 years, and it's done. What does it mean beyond that? And so that's what I believe happens. I believe to the extent that we figure it out, it opens up more avenues and opportunities for us from a soul perspective to have higher, and it's like almost being initiated into a higher degree to be able to take in more knowledge and more experience and to develop your soul that way. Hope I didn't babble too much.
No, you didn't. I mean, it's a different take on the notion of enlightenment or ascension. It's essentially saying, if you have the courage to be devoted to the truth,
right,
it might be uncomfortable. Just like any initiation process, one of the core tenets of an initiation is that it's uncomfortable. That's why it's an initiation. Like, get over yourself,
right? You
know? And so people that don't go through an initiation process, most of the time they're mentally extremely weak. That's why I really have, like, all my best friends are very high order athletes. Like, all of us, it was trial by fire. You either make it or you don't. Like, you better grind and get through it. And we all touched the death experience through that. And so all of us have a mental resilience that is, I mean, we're men. Like, that's the best way to say it. We're not pussies. Here I go being politically incorrect. But no,
so we have retards and pussies so far, but go ahead.
Retards and pussies. That'll be the title of this. So, but that's my point, is like, maybe with what your model of it is I like it, because you could look at the entire life as being an initiation.
Right.
And if none of us are perfect. That's the beautiful thing about it. Everybody's shit stinks. So with that, you're going to mess up. Who gives a shit? What's your core intent? Your core intent is to be devoted. Right. Is to really know the truth. And like, you make it through the life, however long you make it through, and whoever the person is at the pearly gates, if it even is pearly gates, says, oh, okay, maybe that gate is just a gate to a different, puddle on the infinite plane. Who knows? Yeah. Okay, now you get to check this out. You've shown yourself to be worthy of this amount of responsibility, because this is what it comes down to. Right. It's real responsibility, not pseudo fake responsibility of like, oh, I'm responsible for paying my bills into a central banking system, or I'm responsible for giving my kids vaccinations. No. We're talking about real responsibility in the sense of, is your intention, the truth mechanism in you, is that what is the guiding light in your life? Right. Think of it
in terms of metaphysical or spiritual illumination.
I love your model, Mike.
Well, thank you.
It's a great model. It's a really good model. Yeah, and it goes in alignment with the things that I've seen on my side. Yeah, and like I said, it wasn't something that I thought up because I wanted to make myself feel better. I actually had to sit down and philosophize and be philosophical about it and say, well, okay, what does this all mean? Well, you have to get philosophical when you see the overwhelming odds. Last night we were having this great philosophical discussion, like when you see how the cards are stacked, and when you learn in the modern world industry, every industry is corrupt. Every industry is stacked. There are the people in those industries that get the spoils, right?
Right.
The middle class to lower class of the world, which is the majority, they really just get the scraps and really have no say. And I love what my girl was saying, because she was like, when you're taking somebody else's choice away from them, that's the immorality, when they don't even know it. When you're reducing their possible expression without them even being aware of it. And so this gets me into the whole notion of looking at people are authentically fucked up. And what I mean by that is they're being authentic themselves. Like they're really being who they think they are, but who they are has been totally engineered.
That's right.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. They are engineered. And the thing is what we said earlier in the show, they don't even know it.
So they're authentically engineered. So from their perspective, they are being authentic, but they have no idea to the extent that they've been guided to be that way. And this is that AI model.
Yep, that's right. And it starts the day you're born, right? I mean, the day you're born, as an example, the vaccines start shortly after that, right? So then you go to school, which is an indoctrination center, and then you're fed GMO foods, and you have flu shots, and you're drinking fluoridated water, and you have aspartame-tainted food and drinks, and you've got the media, the TV, you got the movies, you have EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, you have all of this stuff. So how could you possibly be truly authentic, organically authentic? It's impossible, because as soon as you're born, they die right on your body to make sure that you don't get up.
A friend of mine started this whole huge movement here in Costa Rica, this organic food movement. And she's been working it now for close to 4 years. The organization has grown. They've raised over 120 different greenhouses. She even created a market for people to sell their organic food. And even with doing all this, she was telling me yesterday, she said, the only way that you cannot be affected is if you actually are a homesteader.
Yeah.
Where you have the land, the financial resources, the capacity to work your own land and produce everything on your own land. She was at a point of disgust where it was like, this whole thing has been an education process for me.
Yeah.
And this is the only way it can be done effectively, like truly effectively. So this gets back to what you're talking about with this whole thing being a metaphysical affair.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, I get it. Like we want to eat organic. We want to be non-GMO. We want to do all this stuff. And it all benefits our physical apparatus for being able to determine what's real out there. And at the same time, you have to be aware of the philosophical, the metaphysical side of it to give you some reprieve. Because if you're solely looking at it from a physical perspective, we're fucked. Like,
Tell me what you really think, Christopher.
I'm sorry. They have bigger guns. They have scalar weaponry. They will win the violence game. They will win the violence game.
Yeah.
So we have to be asymmetrical. We have to actually recognize that it's not so much about the physical side of things. It's much, 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 much more about where we're at on a soul level. That's not to get us off the tip of actually doing what's necessary in the physical, but that's also to give somebody that is fighting the good fight a point of relaxation where they can know, oh my goodness.
Actually, it's a motivator. It's a motivator for people to continue the good fight, because if you stop the good fight, then that metaphysical aspect of it that I was just talking about, it doesn't materialize. So you're highly motivated. You're highly motivated to continue to pursue the truth and to communicate the truth.
Oh man, this is Mike, you're the best. I just want to tell you everything that I look at online of what you share, just the way you communicate. You're one of the more balanced people in your communication style. I sing your praises to everybody. I share all your stuff, and I really appreciate you taking the time to, I know you have to go here pretty soon. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast today. Where can people find your information, and what in your upcoming horizon is looking really exciting for you?
Well, to contact me or to go to any one of my my websites, my blog, and my YouTube channel as an example, just go to my hub website, which is www.sage, S-A-G-E of O-F-Q-U-A-Y, sageofquay.com. And from there, you can go to, like I said, my YouTube channel, my Blog Talk Radio channel, my the blog, which I've had up for several years now. And what's coming up, I've got some good interviews coming up. Believe it or not, I've gotten into the whole Paul is dead, the whole Paul McCartney is dead conspiracy, and I did a show on that recently with Sophia, and
I love it. It
caught a lot of interest, Christopher, much more than I thought it was going to grab, and so as a matter of fact,
well,
go ahead.
There are fewer things that people are more attached to than the Grateful Dead and the Beatles.
Yeah.
I watch people flip out when they are told what the Grateful Dead was or is and what the Beatles were. They just don't want to go there. They just, no, you can't take that sacred cow away from me.
That's the programming, right? That's the AI programming. And, but the thing is, the reason why, in fact, the next interview I have, that's why I have to run, is with somebody who wants to interview me on Paul is Dead. But the reason why it's so important is because for 50 years, there's been a guy out there who essentially, his name is Bill Shepard, who's an imposter. And everybody believes that he's Paul McCartney. And my point being is, if they can pull that off, hidden in plain sight, in the public domain all the time, then just think about all the stuff that they can hide when they don't put it out in front of your face.
Oh, geez. It's incredible. Even seeing like the fake Hillarys that are out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'm an expert when it comes to looking at bodies. And I know that might sound funny, but like when you lay your hands on bodies for your life and you were a scout in football, like I can look at a body structure and size it up almost instantaneously. And when I was looking at the fake Hillarys, I'm like, they're two totally different even body types.
Right. That's right.
And people deny it. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I'm an expert. You're not. Even the bone structure in those pictures you posted last night of the bone structure, I could give a shit about Paul McCartney. I like the music and all, but I was sort of resistant to the Beatles because my mother had it on loop all the time. So, being a kid, like you always resist what your parents have. Yeah. But I could give a shit. I never really looked at pictures, but the time sequence of pictures that you put up, I just freaked out. I'm like, it's not even close to the same person.
Right. That's right. Even when I show people that there's that cognitive dissonance, Christopher, and they'll look at that and like, I don't really see what you're talking about. I'm like, are you kidding me? Does that guy look like that guy? Are you telling me those two people look alike to you? And so, that's where sometimes it gets hopeless and we have to go back to the whole metaphysical aspect.
It is. It's funny, man. Well, this gets back, and this is how I want to end the show, is that in my own spiritual life, I have gotten to a point of knowing it's somewhat biblical in the sense, just the verbiage is to not pray to false idols.
Right.
And so that means don't pray to rock idols, rock stars, don't pray to governments, don't pray to all these authorities, these celebrities that are put out in front of you and give them the power. They are not the ones with the fucking power. You give them the power by idolizing them.
Exactly.
So yeah, get rid of the idolship, and then, the world's a different place. Mike, I love you. I'm going to share everything, and as soon as the podcast goes up, I'll give you the links.
All right, Christopher, I really appreciate it, my friend, and thank you for having me back.
All right, have a great day.
I will talk soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Well, my biocharismites, I hope you enjoyed the podcast with Mike Williams. Please check out his website, www.quay, sageofquay.com. And he also has a YouTube site. I'll put links in the notes, in the show notes. Like I said, next week we will have Stephen Brooks of Punta Mona and Envision Festival. He's a brilliant permaculturist. I think you'll really enjoy him. I'll be writing up a bunch of new articles and be posting them on my blog that you can check out at biocharisma.com. And look forward to doing more of these great interviews with these wonderful people. Everything that I'm learning from these experts in their field is really invigorating my soul to press forward and improve. So thank you for listening. As always, you can subscribe on iTunes and on Stitcher. And please share this, because every time you share, it really helps the podcast grow. And I have a strong intention for it to grow. So that would help me out immensely. So have a great week, and we'll see you back this time next week. Bye-bye.
Sometimes our heart may start to bleed a bit, but I choose this life I'm gonna lead it. I must give my hands to make it in the morning, in the rise of the spring. From all that's been dawning, the vines are pushing through the pavement. We were born of burning hearts. We are tearing off the reins. From the ground up we were building, from the clouds above we raised it, from the crowd up we were raising, from the ground up we were building, from the clouds above we raised it, from the crowd up we were raising, from the ground up we were building, from the clouds above we raised it, from the crowd up we were raising, from the ground up we were building, from the clouds above we raised it, from the crowd up we were raising, from the ground up we were building, from the clouds above we raised it, from the crowd